Almost 50 years ago, Premier Bill Davis's government created the Region of Peel to facilitate the delivery of municipal services in the increasingly urban areas of Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. Now, with all three thriving in their own right, and amid nearly 2 decades of pressure for Mississauga to become a standalone municipality, the region could be on the cusp of a divorce. With us now for more, here's Patrick Brown, he's the mayor of Brampton. Annette Groves is the mayor of Caledon. And Mississauga City Councillor Alvin Tedjo is here as well. And just before we begin, I always do this in the interest of full disclosure. When Patrick Brown is on the program, I want to remind everybody that my wife was a health policy advisor to Mayor Brown 8 years ago when he was the Ontario PC Party leader, and she also ghost wrote his memoir 5 years ago. On the record now. And with all that, welcome everybody. It's great to have you all here.
Thank you.
I don't want to assume that everybody understands how this works. I know you've had regional government in Peel for 50 years, but we got a lot of new Canadians watching this program and they may not know how this works. Local council versus regional council, who does what? Mayor Brown, can you just start by explaining how does this all work together?
Well, this is the legacy of Ontario's greatest public servant, former Premier Bill Davis, who was passionate about Peel Region. And he felt at the time that you could pool resources to provide key services rather than have 3 water treatment plants and to have 3 police forces and 3 paramedic services, that we could pool resources together to provide that service for residents. And that's what we've been doing since 1974. How
well do you think it has worked in those years?
So listen, I think there are challenges, but at the same time, there's strengths. Obviously, on our own, it would have been very difficult to build the water treatment capacity. But when I look at the strength of the Peel Police, when I look at the strength of the paramedics, I think having that regional body has worked. But I look at planning. I think it's a disaster having planning at a regional level and a local level because it slows everything up. And so, I see the good and the bad. And I think it's important to look at it from that big picture.
Why does Mississauga want a divorce?
Well, I think it's time, Steve. Quite frankly, we have other municipalities that are considerably smaller than Mississauga. You're looking at Windsor, London, Guelph, Kingston, even North Bay are single-tier municipalities without a regional government on top of them to duplicate some of those things. And when we're talking about duplication, this premier likes to talk about there's one taxpayer and we want to cut red tape. And duplication right now is the biggest challenge that we have at the Regional Peel. We've got planning, 2 planning departments, we've got 2 works departments, we have regional roads and municipal roads, we have 2 legal services, and we have 2 back office and supports for the corporations. That's a lot of duplication and red tape that we can move on from. And so we want to pass that savings on to the taxpayers, onto Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon residents to make sure that residents are getting the best deal for them. And we want to move quicker. We want to be more nimble. These are the types of things that you can do as a single-tier municipality. But to Mayor Brown's point, there are still some cost savings to be had with economies of scale. And those things we want to continue. You can have wastewater and water together as a public utility, the way we do with Electra and our energy. You can also have Peel Police continue to do their services as a sort of regional police force and have a pay fee system that's more fair for residents.
We'll get into this more as we continue our discussion. The parents want a divorce, Mayor of Caledon. The kid is always the collateral damage in a divorce. So what's happening with Caledon if Peel splits up?
Well, Caledon has always taken a position. We've been through this. This is our 3rd time now going through the whole idea of separation. We've always maintained that we feel strongly that the Region of Peel works well for Caledon. Given the fact that Mayor Brown has talked about the duplication, and I agree with the planning, and I know the Premier has changed that, and they've looked at that. But our position in Caledon is that the region has worked well. It has served the town of Caledon very well.
So you want to leave it as is?
That is our position, is that we leave Peel the way it is. It's worked well for us. And as you know, we are scheduled to take a significant amount of greenfield development. And so, we're just growing up now. Mississauga and Brampton, they've grown up, and we are at that point where we're scheduled to take a lot of greenfield development where we're going to need the support of infrastructure.
So just so I'm clear, you like the Region of Peel. I mean, you tinker, but it's okay. You like it the way it is. You want a divorce. You want a divorce as well? Brampton wants out too?
So what our position has been, if Mississauga insists on a divorce, then they have to pay the bill. And what the bill is our servicing capacity is already at capacity. We've had 4 housing projects turned down because of a lack of servicing just in recent weeks. To rebuild that servicing capacity is extraordinarily expensive. And so when we built it 50 years ago, the cost of infrastructure was very different. And Mississauga's used up that servicing capacity. There is no vacant land in Mississauga. They've used it up. And now was the time for Mississauga to pay for new servicing capacity, a new police facility in Brampton, new servicing capacity in Caledon. And just when they're on the hook to pay for this, they're saying, we're going to leave. Good news, the Premier has assured me Mississauga will not be able to run away on their bill.
What's the bill, do you think?
Well,
how much?
To rebuild, to have servicing capacity.
Calm down, Alvin. I will get to you in a second.
According to the consultants that the City of Brampton is engaged, the water capacity, the water treatment would be $1 billion. The wastewater would be $3 billion. It'd be $4 billion. Just for Brampton alone, that's not including Caledon. Historically, we've paid a 40% share of the cost of new infrastructure. We paid a 40% cost for the 2 facilities in Mississauga. And the expectation is that Mississauga was going to pay for their share in Brampton. We're talking about, this is a huge,
multiple billions of dollars. And you want him to write a check for that?
Well, legally, they're obligated to.
Okay, let's find out over here. Do you think you owe them some money?
So I don't dispute Mayor Brown's numbers at all. I mean, absolutely, the city of Brampton has contributed 40% of all regional infrastructure for the last 50 years. But conversely, Mississauga has contributed 60% and has paid the freight for the region appeal for the last 50 years as well, right? So, we can go into a negotiation and understand that there are services that support everybody and that we are going to continue to use those services, and we can have cost share agreements. We already do this with York Region, where we provide them water and wastewater services at a fee that is fair cost recovery and done with supervision.
But the issue there
we can continue
the issue
doing.
there is that it's used up. You've built up Mississauga. You've used up the servicing capacity. When it's time to build this in Brampton, that's when you're running away on the bill. It's like ordering dinner, eating your meal, and then running away. And so, Steve, my issue is the infrastructure that Alvin's talking about. And I wish Mayor Crombie would be here to speak to it, but the infrastructure that he's talking about is in Mississauga. We built the 2 water treatment plants in Mississauga. The police headquarters is in Mississauga. The infrastructure that Mississauga has paid 60% of, that's in Brampton, are archives we no longer need. The Peel Regional Council chambers we no longer need. That is useless infrastructure that can be
Mayor
sold
Brown,
off.
that's not fair. I mean,
The
we're also paying for
infrastructure-
roads. We're also paying for all the services for the last 50 years. And this is going to continue to happen. We're going to do this in a service agreement, right?
The council chambers are no longer necessary.
No one is out to gouge anyone else. And no one's out to leave the taxpayer on the hook here for Brampton or Mississauga or Caledon.
Can I just ask you, did you pay in any of this stuff?
Yes, we paid 5%.
Paid 5%.
We did pay 5%, and as again, we are the smaller of the 3 municipalities, but we did pay our share. And really, when we looked at this, the last time we looked at this, we determined that when we look at Brampton and Mississauga, the services that they use in social services, Caledon doesn't need that. Caledon does not use that much in the social services cost. Now we do have regional roads that we have in Caledon. We've got 12 regional roads, but it was basically a wash. It was a wash because more social services are used in Brampton and Mississauga as opposed to Caledon. So at that point in time, when we looked at the whole regional governance issue and whether or not we should stay the way we are, and we determined that it was best to stay the way we are.
I'm sure you guys have all done polling on this stuff.
Yes.
We got a little bit of polling here too. In 2019, when the province was reviewing the region, there was some polling done on what people think by Main Street research. In Mississauga, almost half the people supported separation. About a third wanted to stick with the region. 18% supported a new super city of Peel. In Brampton, about 2/3 wanted things left the way it is with the region of Peel. Only 8% wanted to separate, and 25% wanted a super city of Peel to amalgamate. In Caledon, 64% preferred the status quo, 20% wanted to separate, and 17% supported amalgamation. And across the region, only 30% of those surveyed supported dissolution, while half want to keep the region, and 21% wanted a super city of Peel. Premier Ford said earlier this week, for the first time, he went on the record and said he has always been in favor of Mississauga having the right to stand on its own 2 feet and have its own way. I didn't know that. Did that come as news to you, incidentally? Because I don't think he said that publicly before.
So, he has said before that cities as large as Brampton and Mississauga could stand on their own feet. But in the same press conference he had last week in Brampton, he said that the cost associated with this that would not be left on Brampton's doorstep, and that's a very important principle.
He promised to make you whole, I think is the way he said it.
Otherwise, it's theft from Brampton residents. We have paid into that infrastructure over 50 years.
Now, you've been campaigning, not you personally, but your city has been campaigning to become the independent Republic of Mississauga for...
Since 2005.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's 20 years, and yet half the people are only half the people are on side. Are you sure that you are doing what your ratepayers want you to do?
Absolutely. In 2005, when then Mayor McCallion took this to city residents, there was a campaign. It came back 99% in support from residents, sent the city the message that they want to separate and that this would be better for Mississauga residents because the numbers add up that Mississauga residents have been over-contributing to the region and have been subsidizing the other cities. And when you talk about a police model where we're losing or paying more than our fair share,
but that's
where a lot of the savings comes in for the city of Mississauga. But to the mayor's point, the province is talking about making everybody whole to make sure that no one is going to be left out on the
I want to speak to the police point because Mayor Crombie brought up some magical figures she picked out of thin air the other day.
We should say she was invited to be here today. Her schedule wouldn't permit.
But I understand why she wouldn't want to delve into these facts. Facts get in the way with the messaging sometime. Chief Nish has put on the Peel Region website the calls for service. There is no Mississauga subsidy of Brampton. There's more calls on a per capita basis in Mississauga. There's more auto thefts on a per capita basis in Mississauga. There is no subsidy. That's on the Peel Region Police website. It's on right now the funding allocations on a per capita basis. So when you pick up a figure, and it may sound good, it's important that it's rooted in facts, and that's an example of a statistic that's been used by your mayor that is factually incorrect, according to our chief of police, Nishan Dirapa, who is incredibly transparent and incredibly accurate with his details.
Right, and we can talk about whether or not we want to pay based on our user fee or based on the assessment. But we also know that the numbers have been shown over the last 2 studies from Ernst & Young that Mississauga would have a significant amount of savings, up to $1 billion
That's not what
over
Deloitte
the next
said.
10 years. But the Deloitte study wasn't supported. It wasn't supported by the 4 municipalities, including the region. It was not.
Let me jump in for a second.
The Region
here.
of Peel issued that study.
But it was not supported by the council, the regional council, or the municipalities.
It was.
Whereas the Ernst & Young study was done by the 4 CAOs of the lower tier municipalities
Brampton
and
and
the
Caledon
region.
never supported that.
Okay,
We supported
if I may,
Deloitte
though, gentlemen,
study.
if I may, I think the people watching this are more concerned about if Peel dissolves and if police headquarters is in Mississauga, how do people in Brampton have their police calls answered? What happens there?
We wouldn't accept a police headquarters in a different municipality.
So would you have to build your own police headquarters in Brampton?
And Mississauga would have to pay their share of doing so.
You couldn't just simply say the police headquarters can remain in Mississauga and we'll contract services
Steve,
from them.
we just approved at Regional Council a year ago to build a new facility in Brampton. They've already picked the site. They're doing the initial work. And all of a sudden, Mississauga is saying, oh, shoot, we got a big bill to pay for water treatment. We got a big bill to pay for headquarters. Alvin, you voted for the new police headquarters. You voted for it.
We can
now you
have
don't
a
want to pay
shared
for it?
police service. It doesn't matter where the headquarters is. I mean, frankly, it's on the border, right? It's just south of Steeles.
So you don't mind it if we put it in Brampton?
If you want to build, we can build it together, right? I mean, that's the idea, is that we're sharing the services where there's cost efficiency to be found. And that is especially found in policing and water and wastewater.
And now do you understand why 50% said no, just leave Peel the way it is, or an overwhelming majority of my residents are saying leave it the way it is. It has worked well, it has served us well, it has served the community well, and quite frankly, Caledon has never asked for separation. We have never been in favor of separation. We just want to make sure, and as Mayor Brown said, fair share. And divorces are very expensive. We have a $36 billion corporation at the Region of Peel. And when we're talking about shared police services, we have our own police service. We've got OPP, but we have health services. We've got social services. We've got affordable housing. We've got supportive housing. We have so many other things to consider. And right now, I will tell you, we're in trouble with providing affordable housing and supportive housing for many of our residents who are homeless.
But let's talk political reality here. The political reality is the Premier came out the other day and said, this is going to happen.
Absolutely.
So status quo is not an option anymore.
No, it's
So you
not.
guys have to figure out what your future is.
That's right.
How do you see it?
Well, I have every confidence in the Premier, and I met with the Premier a couple weeks ago and spoke about should this happen and what would happen to Caledon, I can tell you that my conversations with the Premier has been extremely positive.
What did he tell you?
Not to mention, we have the Deputy Premier in our riding, Sylvia Jones.
She's your
and
MPP,
Sylvia
isn't she?
is our MPP, and Sylvia understands Caledon. She understands the needs of Caledon. She understands our residents, and she is certainly supported and respected by the Premier. So she's great to have in our corner, and the Premier was quite...
What did he tell you?
Well, I'm not going to throw the Premier under the bus.
Is there
But I can tell you this, that leaving that meeting, I was very confident that we had a partner in the province of Ontario. He understands that Caledon, it's Caledon's turn to grow, and that we have a lot of needs in terms of infrastructure, and not just water and wastewater, but we've got to build communities. And in order to build the 13,000 housing units by 2031, he definitely knows that we need support from the province. And through this audit and this review, I am confident that Caledon will be looked after.
Okay, in which case I want to pick that up with Mayor Brown, because when the Premier says, don't worry, Brampton, we'll make sure you're not left holding the bag and you will be made whole. In other words, these billions of dollars that you feel you're owed will be taken care of somehow. What do you interpret that to mean?
So here's my worry right now. We've explained to the Premier the size of the costs. These are big numbers to build a police headquarters, a water treatment center, a wastewater center. And right now, the talking point of the province seems to be that, don't worry, Mississauga would not be able to run away on its bill. But when I hear Mayor Crombie speak, she says there is no bill. And so the reason I've expressed concern on behalf of my residents is I want to see a plan for this. The great Hazel McCallan always said, do your homework. And so my message to Mayor Crombie in all this is, I'm not against a divorce. I'm not against an independent Mississauga, but do your homework. Tell me how my residents, who over 50 years sweat and toiled and worked hard and contributed to the region appeal taxes to pay for this infrastructure that is critical. It's not infrastructure we don't depend upon, it is critical. Show me the plan. And as it stands today, I have not seen a plan for the province or the city of Mississauga how it will be paid for, but I get assurances from the province not to worry, will be made whole.
So I just need to jump in a little bit there, because Mississauga grew incredibly rapidly and grew first. Right? It started up at the water and it's now going into Brampton, and Brampton is contributing to that, obviously. But Mississauga taxpayers and the developers who helped build Mississauga paid for Mississauga's infrastructure and helped contribute to the region's growth, right? So Mississauga contributed 60%, up to 70% for most years, right, of the region's growth, and had their local roads and services paid for by development charges, which Mayor McCallion invented before we had development charges across the province. And so now we have a province with Bill 23 pushing back on development charges, making it harder for municipalities to make themselves whole and pay for this future development that is happening and the infrastructure that is necessary to get all the houses that the province wants. And we're fighting over the scraps right now at this table, talking about, you know, who's going to pay who for the services that already exist.
Can I get you to speak that, Mayor Brown? Because I know, I think Mayor Crombie had an op-ed in the Toronto Star earlier this week in which he said, you've been able to freeze your budget tax increases 4 out of the last 5 years, in essence, building off the foundation of development charges that Mississauga has brought in over the years, that you've had that advantage. Is that a fair point?
So it's not a fair point in the sense that we have taken value for money audits very seriously. You know, Brampton has had among the highest taxes in the GTA. When I became mayor, I said we need to get that under control. We still have higher taxes in Brampton than there is in Mississauga. So her notion that there's some tax luxury in Brampton that doesn't exist in Mississauga is factually incorrect. What I would say is, you know, for what we have discretionary spending on, we've been careful the last few years, as we have to. In terms of, you know, Alvin's comment about Bill 23, I hope that Bill 23 will not be used as a justification.
Better explain what that is for people
Yeah,
who
so
don't follow
the
all
changes to development charges on Ontario, I hope Mississauga is not saying that's the impetus for wanting to walk away on the bill. This is a bill. There's no arguing that Brampton paid 40% of the water treatment and wastewater infrastructure and police headquarters in Mississauga. You can't run away on that bill. And it has to be replaced.
But the Premier has said he'll make you whole.
But the mayor of Mississauga is saying she doesn't have to. And that's my bone of contention. Alvin's singing a very different tune today. He's very collaborative, and I appreciate that. He's a very affable city councillor. But as the mayor of Brampton, I have to stand up for my residents. And when I hear the mayor of Mississauga saying she doesn't owe anything, That's alarming.
Well, do you care where the money comes from? If it comes from Mississauga or the province of Ontario, as long as you get it?
I just don't think this is Canada's Wonderland. I don't think the mayor of Mississauga is entitled to a free ride at the expense of Brampton taxpayers. Because if it comes from the provincial treasury, who's paying for that, Steve?
Everybody.
It's everybody.
No, when we talk about that as one taxpayer, we're trying to make sure we're getting the best deal for residents of all the municipalities as well as the province. But we're talking about splitting up assets of the region, right? These aren't going to become assets of the city of Mississauga. These aren't going to become assets of the
But you've
region.
already used them up.
But they are provided for everyone within the region.
But
so
you
those
use them.
water and wastewater plants that were built for everyone will belong to a utility that the board will be comprised of people from Brampton, people from Mississauga, and it'll serve all the residents.
Steve, you know what
the
that's
same way
like
that the
saying?
police board already exists today that serves both cities.
Okay.
Right? This is a model that works with Electra. It's a model that can work with water.
So it would just continue.
So, Steve, here's the problem. It's like going for dinner, and Mississauga ate the entire dinner. They give the empty plate over to Brampton and Caledon and say, you enjoy the rest, but you're paying for half the bill. Give me a break.
We're not talking about the same thing. I mean, everyone's got their own plate. We've got a region appeal
You
plate
used
thing
it up,
here,
though.
and
They
we're
used up the
splitting it up.
servicing capacity.
Okay, let me hear from the mayor here. What, okay, yeah, I mean, you see what's going on here. What's the way out of this?
Well, the way out of this is really to wait and see what happens in that audit. I truly believe that the Premier is going to be fair to all three municipalities and all four. And you know, we have to consider also, we're talking about, you know, we're fighting between Mississauga and Brampton. We have to consider all the people that work at the Region of Peel as well. You know, we've got 7,000 employees at the Region of Peel.
Would they be out of a job the day after this happens?
And these are the things that we need to really look at, because some of those people are our own residents that are working at the region. So while we're battling, you know, between Brampton and Mississauga, saying who's going to pay the bill, who owes what, I really think that we need to look at the bigger picture and we need to look at everything.
All right, let me follow up on that for a second. You're what, coming up on 700,000 people in Mississauga?
Over.
Over
Yeah,
700,000?
800,000.
Almost
Yeah.
8. And you're 650?
No, we're close to 7 now.
Close to 7.
We're on pace to surpass Mississauga.
Okay. And your population is?
Close to 80,000.
80,000. So one of these things is not like the other, obviously.
Right.
So
That's
what
right.
he can stand alone, he can stand alone. Can you be a standalone town?
I don't think we can.
So what happens to Caledon? What does it have to join to get its services?
Well, I don't know where we're going to be, where we're going. I don't know what the province is going to do with Caledon.
What would you like to see happen?
Well, in speaking to many of my residents, again, their choice would be to stay, but that's not going to happen.
Right.
It's no longer the reality. They would prefer to go to a municipality or to a region that is comparable to what Caledon is, because we want to remain who we are in Caledon.
So what would that be?
We're looking at York Region.
You might be
Maybe.
next to York.
We're
Okay.
right next door to York Region. And so we've got a lot of similarities with York Region. We've got a lot of municipalities within York Region that are very comparable to Caledon.
Did you tell the Premier this?
I did.
Is he open to this?
I think so.
Have you talked to any of the politicians in York Region to see if they want you?
I did.
And?
Well, some of them are very happy to welcome us in York Region.
And others?
And others I haven't heard. But the ones that I have spoken to, they're quite happy to have us in York Region. And again, when we look at the similarities between Caledon and York Region and the municipalities that make up York Region, there are a lot of similarities. There are a lot of comparable, they're very comparable with us.
Okay. Let me bring some brass knuckles politics into this, and that is, how many of the seats in Mississauga does Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative government currently have?
Yeah, 6 out of 6.
6 out of 6. In the city of Brampton, how many members of the Ontario legislature does Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative government already have?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. And your 1 seat?
1 out of 1.
1 out of 1. So the Tories have all the seats provincially that we're talking about here. Is the Premier, okay, Mayor Brown, you first, is the Premier in a very ticklish situation on this, in as much as what a tightrope he's walking to try and make sure he doesn't tick off his MPPs from Brampton or his MPPs from Mississauga or his Deputy Premier from Dufferin-Caledon. How does he do all that?
So I find the MPPs, and I know them personally, work very collaboratively together. I don't think he needs to worry about there being any type of divisions amongst his MPPs in Peel. I think the broader issue is how he's going to handle, Mississauga wanting to be independent but not pay the bill. That's the. none of his MPPs are saying that. And so really it's how he handles Mayor Crombie's claim.
Okay, can I get you on that as well? Do you think there's a possibility that the MPPs, all of whom are in his caucus, are going to be problematic here?
I think there was a challenge when at one point we were talking about amalgamation and whether or not we should have a megacity. I think that would have been a lot of pushback from residents of both Mississauga and Brampton.
That's off the table, I assume now.
More or less, I think it's off the table now, now that we're talking about separation instead. But I think there was a lot of fear around amalgamation and looking at the city of Toronto and some of the challenges that they had and how their costs actually increased because all the salaries leveled up and the challenges with local representation and trying to get to your councillor and trying to deal with local issues was going to be dwarfed by this huge megacity of 1.5 million people overnight. And I think they heard that message loud and clear. The Conservatives did around that we're not acceptable of that as residents of Peel. But I think right now, we need to make sure that we're coming up with the best deal for all residents. And the province has come in and been very collaborative and said, this is going to be supervised, this is going to be negotiated. We are going to make sure that everyone is kept whole. We are going to make sure that the organizations that get set up outside of this at the local level and at the utility level will be done in a fair way to make sure that no one is going to have to pay more than their fair share.
Okay.
But that's what Mississauga has been asking for since 2005. As we've felt that we've been getting the short end.
I want to ask about savings, because every time I hear somebody say we should create a megacity, as they did in the city of Toronto, whatever it was, almost 25 years ago now, they always say, you know, with this kind of consolidation, we'll get rid of all this duplicative planning departments and so on, we'll save at the end of the day. And it never happens. Mayor Brown, can you be sure that if you get to go out on your own, you'll actually have a leaner, meaner operation there?
Not necessarily. There was a study that the Region of Peel commissioned last term of council done by Deloitte that was exhaustive, and they said that the cost would go up for Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. And so, listen, the Ernst & Young one essentially is predicated, one that the Mississauga requested was predicated essentially on getting rid of all the employees. If you don't get rid of all the employees, it'll be difficult to have savings. Do I think we can work hard to try to find some savings? The example I articulated previously was on planning. Alvin mentioned legal department. There are some areas that we can find savings, but I think we'd be naive to suggest it's simplistic. It isn't. It's going to be difficult.
What about in Mississauga?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about duplicate levels of government, right? We're not just talking about multiple departments doing the same thing, which would be cost savings. Yes, there are going to be issues with people and what we do with people, and do we need the same number of people? There's a lot of planning happening right now. Everyone's looking for more planners, so I don't think there's necessarily an issue there. But we're also talking about a duplication of governance, right? I mean, Caledon is the largest area municipality in the GTA, right? And when they need their roads approved, they need to come to the region with their hat in hand asking for money for their roads, right? We want to make sure that they have the ability to plan that themselves and not have to rely on the region of Peel and the priorities of Mississauga and Brampton in order to get that. And when we're talking about the challenges with homelessness and the affordability crisis, there are very different circumstances in each of these municipalities, right? And when we're bringing those different challenges to a large table that has as many people and priorities as the Region of Peel does, it doesn't work. We were arguing about mass transit station areas. We were arguing about, who can develop first and faster, right? And people do things at different speeds. And so that's one of the challenges here. We need to fix the governance, we'll sort out the finances, and I think everyone's going to be better off.
Well, I want to find that out about Caledon as well. Can you imagine operating more efficiently, a leaner operation, maybe a cheaper operation as part of York Region as opposed to part of Peel?
Well, I think that we certainly can. There are things that we can do. And again, we talked about the duplication. We don't need two planning departments. We do have a lot of regional roads. I'm not sure how York is going to feel about taking over a lot of those roads, but I think there are opportunities there to afford, to be able to run a leaner municipality with York Region. and again, I will go back in saying this, and I've been on record for years and years during these conversations about separation, is that the region appeal worked extremely well. Now, we will have to figure that out during the whole financial review and the audit on how we're going to do that. Where are we going to realize cost savings? How are we going to? Right now, Caledon will be on its own because the Premier has not made a commitment that we will be going to York Region. That's just us in Caledon saying, well, if we had to go somewhere, we would go to York Region. Now,
have you had a vote on that yet at council?
We have not. No,
okay.
we have not. This is just conversations happening within the community. Now, there's Dufferin as well. Can Dufferin afford Caledon? I don't think they can. They don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. York Region has a lot of the infrastructure in place that I think we would be okay with York.
Let me raise one more issue about, we got a few minutes left here, about politics here. And I'm curious as to how you ran for the Ontario Liberal leadership once upon a time against Stephen Del Duca in the last contest. And we hear that the mayor of your municipality is considering running for the Ontario Liberal leadership right now, which means that there's every possibility if she won, she'd be facing Doug Ford in the next election. And all of this is happening under the rubric of all of this kind of, everybody whispering about it behind the scenes. How is all this going to affect all of these negotiations? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, I mean, the separation argument is not a new one, as you mentioned, right? I mean, Mayor McCann talked about this in 2005. And the city of Mississauga likes to talk about, and rightfully so, how lean it's been over the last 15, 20 years. We've saved $77 million by being a lean corporation. And I think the mayor is quite proud of that. And like Mayor Brown has run for other office before. I think that's the decision individually to Mayor Crombie to make on her own time.
But the question really is, can she negotiate on behalf of Mississauga with the Premier of Ontario? Can they actually do business knowing that both of them are thinking down the road that they may be facing off against each other in the next provincial election?
Well, I think they have been. I mean, we've been doing this over the last several weeks and months, and they've been negotiating the separation.
But her candidacy hasn't been as close to being announced as I suspect it is right now.
Well, they were very cordial.
They were actually
both talking
yes, they were.
About the priorities of the region and trying to do what's best for residents. And I think both of them are mature enough and adult enough to be able to separate, an election in 2026 with what's in front of us right now. And that's the challenges that we have as a region.
Okay, let me ask Mayor Brown that, because you are the poster child for being big-time enemies with Doug Ford, and now you guys are best buddies. So this actually can work?
Well, I've got a very good relationship with the Premier now. 4 years ago, there was other actors involved that made that conversation more difficult. But, we have a very good relationship right now. We've got the new hospital deal done, a new medical school coming to Brampton, so a number of major wins. In terms of Mayor Crombie's candidacy, I don't think she's going to run. I thought that was more pushback against a potential megacity. I think now that there's no megacity, we're going to hear very shortly that she's not running.
Do you know something?
Well, that was the rumor in Peel Region. It was more of a threat about a megacity.
Well, as we often say at the end of this program, we shall see. I want to thank Alvin Tedjo for coming in from the city of Mississauga, and then the two your worships on the other side of the table, Patrick Brown from Brampton, Annette Groves from Caledon. Thanks for having such a civilized discussion here, everybody, and good luck with the divorce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.